Do you want to reach Spanish fluency, but you're not sure how to get there? Well, these 5 pillars are the way to attain fluency. In this video, we're going to zoom out and look at the big picture. These are broad categories, but you want to make sure you're giving time to each of these throughout your learning journey. For each pillar, I'm going to answer, what is it? Why does it matter? And what happens if you ignore it? I think number 5 has a caveat, and you can let me know if you agree or not. Okay, here we go. Pillar number 1, input. Get exposed to Spanish. So what is it? This essentially means feeding your brain Spanish. This includes actions like reading, listening, and comprehensible input, which just means listening to stuff that's challenging but not too challenging. These actions lead to acquiring new vocabulary and seeing how that vocabulary is used within a context. Learning random vocabulary alone is not the way to fluency. However, building a vocabulary is very important, and input is a great way to develop that. So why does it matter? Think of how a baby would learn a language. They absorb all the information and context clues around them. So although as adults we don't learn a language exactly the same way a baby would, it's still very necessary to immerse yourself in the language as much as possible in order to develop a real understanding of the language. What happens if you ignore it? I see input as the groundwork of becoming conversational. Comprehensible input alone won't make you fluent, but it will help you understand spoken Spanish. And it's kind of hard to have a conversation if the other person sounds like... So the key idea here is you can't speak or understand words that you've never seen or heard. It makes sense, right? Pillar number 2, understanding patterns. Make sense of what you're seeing and hearing. What is it? This is the glue that holds all your Spanish knowledge together. It includes things like sentence structure, verb patterns, and word order. It can also be called grammar. The word grammar might scare some people, but it really just amounts to the language patterns that get used over and over again. The more you see them, the more familiar they become. How about an example in English? I eat, I ate, I'm eating. We recognize these patterns of speaking in English that indicate when something is taking place. Easy, right? Why does it matter? All these things I just mentioned matter so that language makes sense. It's a pillar of language itself. It's how we're able to form clear, meaningful sentences. And what happens if you ignore it? You want to be able to express yourself freely in Spanish without having to memorize every single sentence you say beforehand. So we learn rules, structures, and pre-made phrases that can be used when we need them. And we want to be able to convey our thoughts and ideas accurately to avoid misunderstandings. The key idea here, grammar isn't about memorizing 500 rules, it's about recognizing patterns through exposure. Pillar number 3, sound. Train your ears and your mouth. What is it? This pillar focuses not so much on what is being said, but how it's being said, the overall sound of the language. Another word for this is pronunciation. Pronunciation refers to the way in which a word or a language is spoken. So this includes things like listening discrimination, rhythm, stress and accent recognition, and connecting sounds. These can vary greatly depending on the region, so it helps to focus on one specific region, like Mexican Spanish, for example, which is what I mostly focus on. So let's start right now with the Spanish vowel sounds. A, E, I, O, U. Just focusing on these at the beginning will improve your Spanish pronunciation greatly. Why does it matter? Number 1, clarity and understanding. Proper articulation, as well as training your ear to pick up the sounds correctly, prevents words from being confused with others, like pen and pan or car and card. This reduces the number of times you have to repeat yourself or ask someone else, ¿Qué? Number 2, confidence and fluency. Knowing your words sound correct minimizes anxiety and helps you participate more actively in social and professional settings. What happens if you ignore it? You might know 3,000 words, but native speakers won't understand you, or even worse, you won't understand them because your brain hasn't learned Spanish sounds. The key idea here, better pronunciation works both ways. It makes you easier to understand, but most learners don't realize that it also improves listening comprehension. Pillar number 4, output. Use the language. So what is it? Turning knowledge into communication. This is the opposite of input, and it includes things like speaking, writing, thinking in Spanish, conversations, and yes, making mistakes. Input builds knowledge while output builds skill. Why does it matter? Being able to understand Spanish is great and necessary. However, just because you can understand it doesn't mean you can speak or write it, especially at the speed which is required for conversation. And what happens if you ignore it? Well, skipping output practice means you're holding yourself back from getting the whole experience of learning Spanish. Remember, input builds knowledge, output builds skill. But they're not always 50-50, and here's a good analogy for that. Think of input as putting ingredients into your kitchen. Output is cooking with those ingredients. If you never stock the kitchen, you never have anything to cook. But if you never cook, all those ingredients just sit there. So the key idea, language exists to communicate, so let's use it. And last but not least, pillar number 5, culture. Use it naturally and appropriately. What is it? Did you ever say something in your own language and wonder if you just said something wrong? Well, imagine stepping into a whole other culture. This is why it's important to learn how Spanish is actually used in the real world. It includes things like colloquialisms and slang, idioms, customs, regional differences, humor, and social norms. These can all fall under the umbrella of cultural context, which also includes nonverbal language, like eye contact. So why does it matter? Grammar is only the visible tip of the iceberg, easy to study in textbooks, while culture is the massive, hidden foundation that dictates how native speakers actually interact in real life and use that language. There are so many examples of this in our native language that we don't even have to think about. For example, sarcasm. In some cultures, this is seen as humor. In other cultures, it can be seen as confusing or even disrespectful. Another example is idioms. The American idiom, time is money, reflects a cultural emphasis on hard work, independence, and achievement. So a simple idiom can give a lot of insight into a culture's values, geography, history, and mindset. And colloquialisms, like in America, ballpark can mean an approximate estimate. So these are part of everyday speech. So it's an important part of learning language. But what happens if you ignore it? In regard to learning the Spanish language, you risk sounding unnatural, misinterpreting social cues, or even being accidentally offensive. The key idea here is that culture turns correct Spanish into natural Spanish. So now about that caveat I mentioned earlier. As someone who has learned Spanish as an adult, I think it's okay if you don't sound just like a native at the beginning. The goal, of course, is to get there, but I think it's important to start with the basics before you start adding on too much slang, for example, or too many variations. But let me know what you think. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My goal is to incorporate all of these pillars into my channel. So if you're interested in going from no hablo español to yo hablo español, I invite you to join me. Thank you so much and have a great day.